I'm Professor Kenneth Hansen of the University of Central Florida Judaic Studies program, and I'd like to share some exciting new backstories gleaned from the Hebrew Bible with a little help from AI. Anyone who's familiar with the Bible knows something about the ancient kingdom of Solomon, which was divided after his death into two squabbling dynasties. 10 northern tribes broke away, while Benjamin and Judah remained in the south, centering their worship on the Jerusalem temple. We can refer to them as a priestly elite or hierocracy from the line of Tzadok, tracing their lineage back to Moses' brother Aaron. We can therefore call them Aaronites. The priestly class in the north, centered around the shrine of Shiloh and Anathoth, from which Jeremiah hailed, were from Moses' line, and we can call them Mushites.
Of course, mysteries abound, and so do adventurers and textual archaeologists, like this fellow, who might look familiar. For over 2 centuries, back and forth conflict consumed both northern and southern kingdoms in a veritable Game of Thrones. Eventually, the north succumbed to the powerful Assyrian Empire in the year 722 BCE. Benjamin and Judah in the south hung on for more than a century thereafter, until the Babylonians, under King Nebuchadnezzar, turned them into a vassal kingdom, and when they rebelled, brought about total destruction of Jerusalem and the temple. In 586 BCE, the sacred shrine was burned to the ground. Beginning as early as 597 BCE, the upper classes, those with power and authority, including the Zadokite priesthood, Aaronide in lineage, were taken captive and exiled to faraway Babylonia. There, among the upper classes deported, was a priest likely attached to the Jerusalem temple staff, named Ezekiel.
The world's greatest detective at your service. You may call me Hercule. Ezekiel, of course, is most famous for having recorded a powerful vision while residing at Tel Aviv on the Kabar Canal near Nippur. The vision depicts a divine chariot throne occupied by the God of Israel. Most modern readers of the text are taken by its otherworldly nature. Mystical visions are not uncommon in ancient societies, and they persist across the centuries down to modern times. And in most cases, the visions are congruent with the recipient's belief system. In Ezekiel's case, he is not just an Israelite monotheist, but a priest and part of the priestly hierarchy. Led by Zadokites, they are not just religious leaders. They are the temporal rulers of society. They are the ancient Israelite equivalent of the 1%.
The idea is radical, even revolutionary, for God has manifested the divine presence well beyond the Jerusalem temple. In the particulars of Ezekiel's vision, God's fullness appears in a foreign land, where the people are living in lonely exile. As for who wrote the book, we need a textual Sherlock.
We cannot say who was responsible for the entire book of Ezekiel, though most scholars think that multiple authors were involved in its composition. In any case, most important is the message it delivers, crystallized in Ezekiel's powerful vision of a restored temple, found in chapters 40 through 42 of the book. In his vision, Ezekiel is taken back to Israel where he sees a mountain and a city.
ויבא אותי שמה, והנה איש מראהו כמראה נחושת, ופתיל פשתים בידו, וקנה המידה, והוא עומד בשער. And he brought me there, and behold, there was a man, whose appearance was like the appearance of brass, with a line of flax in his hand, and a measuring rod, and he stood in the gate.
The man tells Ezekiel to pay careful attention to everything he sees and hears, and to relate all the details to his people Israel. Haged et kol asher ata ro'eh lebet Israel. Declare all that you see to the house of Israel.
The measuring of the layout of the vast temple complex fills the next 3 chapters of the book. The dimensions are staggeringly huge and contain elements that are clearly mystical rather than realistic. But we can deduce that the meaning of the vision presented in this section of the book was more than real. When the people returned to their land after their captivity, pursuant to an edict issued by the Persian Emperor Cyrus, the new temple, to be rebuilt in those days, will be sanctioned by divine providence. The priestly theocracy, which oversees its rituals and sacrifices, will exercise all authority, both civil and religious.
But of course, this theocracy, or hierocracy, was the Zadokite priesthood, the Aaronid line, supposedly descending from Moses' brother. This is later mentioned by the man of brass with the measuring rod, who stresses the sons of Tzadok.
והלשכה אשר פניה דרך הצפון לכהנים שומרי משמרת המזבח, המה בני צדוק, הקרבים מבני לוי אל השם לשרתו. And the chamber facing to the north is for the priests, the keepers of the charge of the altar. These are the sons of Tzadok, who from among the sons of Levi come near to the Lord to minister unto him. What about the rest of the Israelites, the majority of the people, who were not exiled, but remained in the land? The Mushite line, which spawned, among others, Jeremiah, who claimed to have descended from Moses himself. We need to get the bigger picture, that the last half of the 6th century BCE was dominated by the Zadokites. Their chief target was the Levites, the priestly tribe, whose ranks were filled by a large number of Mushites. That is because the Mushites had long ago been removed from their current position in Solomon's temple, whereupon they were amalgamated into the ranks of the Levites. When the Zadokite-dominated exiles returned to the land, conflict with the Levitical priests who had remained in the land was inevitable. They were the ones who carried on the activity around the altar site during the dark years of exile.
After the exile, we may deduce that the conflict deepened further, as the Visionaries saw the Israelite aristocracy, under the high priest Ezra, in cahoots with the Persians, who ruled the region. This they perceived as a threat to the very autonomy and lordship of Israel's God, who required no human agency to bring about the divine plan of redemption. They still remembered the horrible legacy of the Zimride dynasty in the north.
They also remembered the oppressive rule of Judah's king Manasseh, and consequently had no stomach for foreign rule of any kind. Indeed, my detective friends, Persian influence, they felt, had resulted in the corruption of religious and civic leaders. Such corruption was present in the tolerance and compromise connected with the established national cult. It didn't matter that as they achieved dominance, the hierocrats promoted an attitude of conciliation. Interestingly, the prophet Ezekiel regularly refers to the sons of Tzadok, quite favorable to the Zadokite hierocrats. But the theorized priestly source of the Torah, known as P, and theoretically composed at the time of the Second Temple and ascribed backwards to Moses, instead references the more inclusive term for the priesthood, calling them the sons of Aaron. The P source was preoccupied with cult and law, with no interest in apocalyptic speculation. The so-called chronicler, responsible for the books of Chronicles, was of the same mindset.
We can also deduce that the conflict between the Zadokite, Aaronide priests and Levites likely involved other groups who served in the temple: singers, servants, gatekeepers. In the end, it appears that the Levites gradually lost status during the Second Temple period. The Zadokites, by contrast, formed a hierarchy with the support of the Persians, and we can deduce that they were responsible for Ezekiel 40 through 48, the early chapters of Zechariah, and the books of Haggai and Chronicles.
Of course, the society that developed under Ezra and Nehemiah, governor of Persian Judea under Artaxerxes I, was limited in size to the territories of Judah and Benjamin. It amounted to a compromise lacking eschatological hope. The Visionaries longed for complete restoration based on prophetic promises. This caused even more conflict, which centuries later culminated in the schism between the Sadducees, descendants of the hierocratic priesthood, and the pietistic group known as the Hasidim, which emerged during the Maccabean revolt of the 2nd century BCE. We may theorize that the Mushite-dominated Levites would eventually have no place in the rebuilt temple. Such a reversal of fortune could not have been more bitter. They began to focus increasingly on the end of days, and the prophecies they uttered were much less rooted in historical circumstances. And that, of course, is not to say that the end of days, that is, eschatology, was never a focus of the earlier prophets. But such prophecies always had to do with human endeavor, within the confines of history, to bring about a new and messianic age. This so-called prophetic eschatology involved translating the vision of the divine council into historical terms.
As events progressed, we may deduce that the Visionaries increasingly focused on a program of restoration, to be initiated and carried out by God alone. Nor would it be focused on the temple, but on spiritual redemption of the people as a whole.
That theme would be picked up by subsequent generations of pious Israelites who remained in conflict with those who ruled the religious roost in the Jerusalem temple. Some of them would abandon society altogether, preferring to live on the shores of the Dead Sea, producing a veritable library of texts we can now call the Dead Sea Scrolls. Others, such as Jesus of Nazareth, would become so enraged with the hierocratic temple cult as to create an incident in the courtyards of the sacred shrine by overturning the tables of the money changers and quoting the prophet Jeremiah.
הדבר אשר היה אל ירמיהו מאת השם לאמור, עמוד בשער בית השם, וקראת שם את הדבר הזה. המארת פרסים היה הבית הזה, אשר נקרא שמי עליו בעיניכם. גם אנוכי הנה ראיתי נאום השם. The word that came to Jeremiah from the Lord, saying, Stand in the gate of the Lord's house, and proclaim there this word. Has this house, whereupon my name is called, become a den of robbers in your eyes? Behold, I, even I, have seen it, says the Lord.
But to understand the progression from classical biblical prophecy to pure apocalyptic, we're going to need to dig even deeper. So hold on to your fedoras and grab your magnifying glass. The textual sleuthing has only just begun.